Okay, thanks so much for joining us at this session. So we're here to, after 3 days of conference, we're finally going to get stuck into FOGO. So this session is called FOGO on the Go-Go. My name is Giunta. I'm the Director of Major Programs at the New South Wales Environment Protection Authority. And the FOGO rollout and the rollout of organics collections to businesses falls within my area. So today I have with me an excellent panel of people who are going to talk to you about their various perspectives on the FOGO rollout, and I will hand over to allow them to introduce themselves one by one, and then we will allow all of our panellists to talk to us about their experience in general for sort of 5 or 10 minutes. I'll ask a few questions and then we will hand over to you. So please start thinking about your questions as we go. So first of all, I'd like to introduce the lovely Linda Tohver from North East Waste.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And so we're doing our little 5-minute intro now.
Maybe just everybody say who they are and where they're from, and we'll come back and do the intro.
Okay, so I am the Education Coordinator for North East Waste and have the privilege of working in partnership with 7 member councils across the northeast of New South Wales.
Aaron Azzopardi from Re.Group. I'm the Regional Manager. I operate and manage a couple of MRFs along with the Shell Harbour FOGO facility.
Hello. Virginia Brunton. I work for Mike Ritchie with MRA Consulting, have done so for nearly 10 years. I work between government processes, the industry to get the best out of FOGO.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Matthew. I'm from Australian Native Landscapes. I've been in the industry for 26 years, all facets of organic recycling, from manufacture to sale, end markets, quality. And thank you for having me here today. I'm standing in for Patrick.
Thank you. Helen Bradley, Inner West Council, Resource Recovery Planning Manager. And yeah, we've just rolled out FOGO and it put us on the map and not necessarily in a good way.
Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, so over to you, Linda.
Yeah, so I have the absolute privilege of having worked with North East Waste for just over 20 years this year. And in those 20 years, I have seen 6 out of our 7 councils transition to curbside FOGO services. One of those councils had already begun before I even started. So shout out to Lismore City Council, who had the first curbside FOGO service back in 1999, and they're still going strong. And our other 6 councils since then transitioned. So we had Ballina and Clarence. So the beautiful Dirt Girl did the Clarence Valley Council's campaign and they won an award. And then we had Richmond Valley, Byron Shire, and this year was Kyogle. So actually it was at July last year, so I talk in financial years. So it's incredible to think that pretty much every town and householder in our region has the absolute privilege of being able to recycle their food scraps. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't always gone smoothly. And I should also highlight that all of our councils now share the same type of service. So they have a weekly curbside FOGO service and a fortnightly alternating landfill/recycling service. So there have been requests for bigger bins, bigger landfill bins. There have been, social media warfares at councils about, come on, why isn't my bin being collected? There's been confusion about which bin goes out on which night. That's all part of the process. It's all normal. And I think, the benefit that we've had is councils who are kind of neighbouring on each other residents kind of get flagged that, oh, look, they've got a green bin service. Why don't we have one too? So by the time that we came around to Kyogle, wanting, implementing their curbside FOGO service, they, in fact, their residents, who were surveyed, were saying, can we please get this third bin already? Like, we're ready for it right now. So this is the good news that we've had in our region, where we've actually recovered, last financial year was 42,000 tonnes of FOGO. This financial year with Kyogle on board as well, it's going to be estimated at around 45,000 tonne. I think one of the issues that we have though is because the service has been embedded for so long and it's almost like a norm now, people get lazy and they forget. And it's just constant kind of education and promotion and banging on about the same message over and over again. Get your food into the green bin, get your food into the green bin, because there's still 20% of food going into our landfill bins on average in our region. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we're having. The other issue is, of course, because we started back in 1999 and so early, we were accepting fibre-based packaging into our FOGO bins. So that's the other thing that we're dealing with. It's like a whole new behaviour change campaign again, and people don't understand why they can't put in those compostable containers that say that they're compostable into the curbside FOGO bins, and they're really cranky and annoyed about it. So, yeah, I think there's, in terms of what's really worked for us in our region, partnerships and collaboration, working together with our councils, sharing what's worked, sharing resources, using the scrap campaign that you're so fortunate, you guys who are starting out, to actually have, because we didn't have those resources, and it is such a cost-effective solution. And just, being prepared, I think, for adversity, bringing your counsellors on board. They're important. They're going to be the face of the campaign as well, and you need to take them on the journey well before, that first green bin collection happens. So they're my hot tips at the moment.
Thanks very much, Linda.
I actually have a couple of photos.
Sure.
So just a bit about Re.Group's facility. So we operate a tunnel composting facility in Shellharbour, and we receive material from 3 separate councils, all delivering a FOGO service. So I'd like to put up some dirty pictures. So as you can imagine, one of the biggest challenges for a facility like ours is contamination. Now, we're only handling 20 to 24,000. Sorry. So as you can imagine, we're processing around 20 to 24,000 tonnes of FOGO per annum, and our biggest challenge is producing a quality end product and handling the contamination that comes in. So a bit what you alluded to earlier about changes in what's acceptable in FOGO, that has changed, and we're still managing that expectation with some of the councils, and that behaviour change is still taking a while to change. The FOGO bags themselves, can contribute to, the Trojan horse effect, where they represent a large portion of contamination in the stream, and more importantly, it's the small amounts, or the smaller pieces of contamination which become extremely difficult to remove. Then from an operator's perspective, because we rely heavily on manual intervention on removing contamination, it's the vast variety of different compostable bags, and operators then having to make a decision: is this one that is acceptable? Is this the one that's going to compost well in our tunnelling process? So as you can see, there's a there's a host of colour variations on compostable bags. They can get used for various purposes. My favourite is the nappy bag, because they are the perfect size. And our record is 9 straight bags from pre-sort in the space of 5 minutes, basically all containing nappies and The scary one there, I'm not sure if you can make it out, is a vape. So you get a whole variety of contamination in those bags. You've got to remember these bags are in the household where people are, doing work with the kitchen. So anything in the kitchen you can expect may end up in these bags. So our operators are then having to make a decision: do I toss that to landfill, or do I break it? Have I got time to break it up and see what's in there? You can comfortably tell which is the one that are containing full loads of organics. They're quite degraded by the time they get there. The dry, light ones are the nappy ones, so they get tossed, but it is a challenge. Our operators, have a struggle to have to manage that, and that takes up a fair bit of time, especially when the loads are high in summer months. We get less and less time to focus on that detail. The next point is that transition from, earlier that we said, fibres and all compostable packaging was deemed acceptable in the FOGO service. If I can get you to click to the next photo. As you can see, this was only taken yesterday. That's by weight, it's not a huge volume, by weight, it's not a huge amount, but by volume, that's a lot of picking for our operators to handle, and it's a lot of packaging. Just another ongoing challenge. So by far the biggest challenge here is identifying what we should be removing from the compost stream, and that ongoing litter management, mainly in film plastics. So we talk about contamination rates, and we talk, councils might only have, their audits suggest it's only 3 or 4% contamination. We're seeing, on average, notably higher contamination levels than that. But one of the things, which I'll point out in the next slide, just quickly, is, we're talking, film plastic is our biggest challenge. It looks terrible in a finished product, and it's the one that we're chasing all the time. So that photo on the left is just one bin load of film plastic. It represents only 100 to 150 kilos of film out of a process rate of, we might have processed 150 tonnes that day, and we're talking 0.1 to 0.2% contamination. So by a numbers perspective, extremely low contamination rate, but from a volumetric perspective, absolutely horrendous, right? And in a finished product, trying to get, if we don't remove that, you can imagine the quality that we're going to produce is going to be nowhere near where it needs to be. So not binning the bag, I'm not bagging the bin bags or anything like that. It's more about, what's the end game here for us? So we're not just a FOGO processor, we're not just a green lid processor, we are a compost manufacturer. So, then part of that is getting good quality feedstock so that we can ensure that the end product that, eventually goes on to multitude of customers is of a high standard. We're a manufacturer of compost, and that's what we're trying to be. So anything that we can do about education and improvements to the way we receive that material can go a long way to helping the whole process and ensuring that it's a embedded and reliable service for everyone.
Thanks very much, Aaron.
Thank you. Did you see my cape last night? Okay, that was a mix of compostable, non-compostable, mix of green and white. So it's no wonder processors have a challenge when it comes to bags and film plastic in their system. So my main interest in FOGO at the moment is not so much on the rollout and the implementation, it's the shared responsibility and the risk for contamination. And I say that quite deliberately, that contamination is a shared responsibility. Councils are used to pushing the risk of contamination onto processors, and that isn't really going to deliver the outcome that we want for circular organics. What needs to happen is for all of the members of the supply chain, including government, to recognise that contamination costs and that contamination control, management of contamination needs to be shared by everybody. And, government, councils, processors and collectors all have a responsibility in this, and they all have an incentive to improve contamination, reduce contamination. Governments can recognise that zero contamination might be a goal, but it's not really an outcome. it's very difficult for any processor to get zero contamination. I've been to some very high quality, great processors in Australia, and they all struggle. One in particular, the last bit of contamination they're managing is fruit stickers. Hence Mike last night wearing a fruit sticker emblem. So, you know, it's a process that everybody needs to recognise their role in contamination, and councils can organise this through their tendering. So if councils were to tender sliding contamination schedules, they then recognise that contamination costs them money. And some back of the envelope calculations can show that the high contamination penalties more than pay for education. So it's an ongoing thing, but it's also then a shared responsibility. And processors are not just processing. They are manufacturing compost, and that compost has to have a market. Otherwise it's going to stockpile and the whole circular organic system is going to fall over. So they need to manufacture compost that is acceptable to the market. And that is a compost that is free from film plastic, it's free from obvious rigid plastic, and it's free from obvious contamination by glass metal. So that requires effort. It's not, it just doesn't happen by itself. Just like the recycling industry invests millions of dollars in decontamination, in separation and sorting. Optical sorters, and their contamination is 11%. At most we're dealing with, on bad days, maybe 15% contamination. If we're talking, sort of weight per volume, well, weight per weight. But if we're talking volume per volume, the number counts push it up, particularly for film plastic. So if the recycling industry can invest heavily in decontamination to get a marketable product, so can the organics processing industry, because they also are market-facing and they also need to produce a high-quality product. But that investment needs to come from councils and it needs to come from government. So this is what I mean, it's a shared risk and a shared responsibility and a shared incentive. The collectors also have a role to play in this. All the collectors have got cameras. Very often, you can see, like, they've all got logs of film of highly contaminated material being picked up. Councils need to incentivise the collection contractors not to pick those bins up. And then again, they can do that through their contracting, their tendering and their contracting. So there's an incentive on the collectors not to pick up contamination. There's, again, tendered contamination thresholds. So all along the supply chain, there is a shared risk, a shared responsibility and a shared cost and incentive to manage contamination. It's not easy, but it does require a bit of a rethink. And there is recently in New South Wales a couple of contracts that have come out with this sort of approach. And industry might need to get their head around this and understand that it's coming because it is going to be paid for. Councils are beginning to recognise that they need to pay for decontamination, just like they pay for the recycling services. That's me.
Thanks, Virginia.
Hello, yeah, so we'll talk about the journey and the journey of FOGO, and for me, again, 26 years, so I've had a career built out of organics and organics recycling. It's something that I believe in, it's something I've stuck with, and it's something that I see the results and how it all works and comes together. So for me, I'm every day faced with how are we going to face these challenges of contamination and the ramifications of where they're going to end up and how we're going to treat these products. And that everything that comes with that has a flow-on effect. So our current contamination is less than 1% with Go. FOGO, I'm a little bit drawn between what we have is a 97% Go content, a 3% FO content, and of that 3%, we're reaching up to 33% contamination in that FO. So then for us to then have to take that hundreds of kilometres to a market where we really should be thinking about that carbon footprint and how to get that all the way to where we're likely to get it onto an agricultural space is really beggars belief where our biggest market's urban amenity. So we all go to FOGO. Where are we going to get all these soils that we need for multiple projects that use organics in soils production? And for us, you can't keep digging riverbanks to get soils for projects and industry. We need organics. We need organics recycling. We need organics moving forward as a community. And when you talk about change and behavioural and contracts, I think there's a little bit of mixed messaging going on. So, but ANL's committed, and we're committed to FOGO. We've got multiple facilities in operation and under construction, and we're here for the long run. So we are committed to making this work all together, and it hasn't been a smooth road. There's been challenges, and pretty much every step of the way. Every step of the way, there's things that we have to try and get with great pain over the line. So for me, the world changed on January 10. January 10 is the day that I found about the asbestos in mulch. So that was the day when end users, general public, they all expected and demanded zero contamination. They demanded it. Zero contamination. We're not going to take any contamination in mulch or any contamination in this space, that space. It's public spaces especially. So we've had pretty much that's been my 2024 to date. Validation, quality control, things we've been doing for over 30 years. ANL's been in operation for 53. So for us, it's taken us back 10 years plus to have conforming products, conforming to the standard, to then have, hang on, we want zero contamination in terms of physical, and we're not going to take no for an answer. So that's ongoing and still to the day. So we've got the capability and we have the opportunity to correctly come together as a community. And when we talk about community, we've got different councils opting in. We want to do this, we want to do that, can we do this, can we do that? But when I was listening to the Don't Be a Tosser EPA gentleman yesterday, he had a statewide footprint and he managed to get the message across pretty clear. I'm a pretty basic kind of a guy. I come from an operational background. Like I said, I've got a lot of experience in terms of converting an organic waste stream into a finished product, getting out to a paddock, talking to a farmer, talking to someone growing something, doesn't matter what they're growing, how they're growing it, we provide that. So when I look at the rollout of, you can opt in, you can do this, you can do a red bin every second week, or just for me, it just doesn't, it's not an A to B pathway. I'm not sure why we can't say, hey, this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to run with it, this is what we can put in. Don't worry about what we can't put in, it just confuses and the message is just washed over and we lose it in translation somewhat. I'm a father of 3. My wife and I both work, we come home, we're chopping the veggies, we buy everything in packets. We're an Americanised society and FOGO is a European model. So we buy everything in packets, we have to separate, we do this, we do that. Where do we put it? This bin, that bin? It's confusing. But like I said, we're here for the long run, we're committed, we're on the journey together. I just wanted to express my concern because after 26 years, and this is what I know, this is my work, to say that I'm not worried, I'd be lying. I'm a bit worried, but I know that we've got people with great intentions trying to make it all happen. I just think that the messaging, the pathway, and the understanding of where it all goes has to all come together.
Thanks, Matthew. Bit of teamwork there. So yeah, the F word, FOGO, of course. We've had quite a challenging journey at the Inner West over the past 6 months. So I'd have to say in 21 years of waste, this has definitely been the hardest, yet the most rewarding project I've ever worked on. We've managed to recycle 10,000 tonnes of FOGO in the first 7 months. We've had our ups and downs, but really we keep our eye on the prize, which is this amazing compost product that's then going to agricultural land. I'll just give you, I'm part of quite a big team. The real FOGO heroes are the amazing, resilient staff that I work with. The amount of hours, the blood, sweat, tears that have gone into this project behind the scenes, you wouldn't believe. Most people have only seen the hysteria on social media, on the news, misinformation. Believe it or not, some things did actually go well for Inner Western FOGO. It wasn't all negative, it wasn't all toxic. As we all know, working in local government, we only hear from the squeaky wheels and those really loud voices. We don't often hear from people who are congratulating us on doing a great job or really happy with the service. We only hear from the people that have really got a problem. So I've got a few learnings to share with you. Something that we did do was in our organics and our garbage MBT contracts, we did have clauses way back years ago. So that enabled us to then negotiate with our partners, Veolia over there, put up your hands. We could then negotiate as the organics in our MBT garbage went down and as our FOGO organics went up. There's an impact on both of those contracts and risks involved with both. And we were fortunate that we'd got one contractor to deal with for both of those streams. And it's been a partnership. It really has been an amazing journey. We're also working with Topsoil through Veolia, and they're processing the material on our behalf. So, I mean, the thing we need to keep in mind is that we're all trying to reach the same outcome, and that is to produce a really high quality organic product that can be used on agricultural land. What I'd suggest doing, any councils that are about to embark on the journey, is really know your waste stream. So look at your audit data, look at your tonnages, do the modelling, look what's in the bin, work out what you expect to recover. So our target was 50% recovery of the food in the red bin into the FOGO stream, and we more than achieved that. So we modelled that we should be achieving 1,100 tonnes a month, and we've been achieving higher than that already with all the maggots and everything else that have been reported. So we're up to the 10,000 tonne mark already. Something else I found was really helpful was the New South Wales EPA Best Practice Guide. And this is evidence-based. So this is based on all the councils in New South Wales, their audit information of what bin configurations and service frequencies are going to achieve the best outcomes. Yeah, it's a really difficult journey, particularly when in the first week of FOGO, we received 4,000 phone calls. And that, for a small team, we absolutely got hammered, and it didn't slow down or stop for, 6 months, really. So you're really kind of in for the long haul there. So I'd really recommend starting FOGO in autumn so that you've then got 6 months to embed the service before summer hits, because you get a humid summer, maggots everywhere. People are putting them on the news, Channel 7, Channel 9, maggots crawling through the house. Really communicate with your residents what your service is going to be, the what, when, why, how. Make it clear, make it easy. Have contingencies in place. Something that I didn't foresee was the amount of households with, say, incontinence pads, which are really heavy, residents with dementia who've put their red bin out for the last 30 years every week. You can't change that behaviour. So sometimes for medical reasons, it's necessary to have a weekly garbage collection for some people within the community. One size never fits all, we know that. And people go through different challenges at different stages of their lives and generate different waste streams. But on the whole, most people want to do the right thing, and with a bit of hand-holding and support, they can. We did have contingencies. You've probably seen that in the media as well. So red bin upsizes, an opt-in weekly red bin. So we went to best practice. We did fortnightly garbage and weekly FOGO. So we'd already got opt-in food organics only in apartments, and then we rolled it out to 35,000 households. The main message that we found really helpful was that food is still weekly, it's just in a different bin. And we kept reiterating that to our residents. We did double the size of our team for the FOGO rollout, so we had 10 people in the resource recovery team, and then we got temporary contracts, anything from 2 months to 1 year, to essentially double the size of the team. So we had 2 extra in the call centre. We had 4 students, which are amazing, really bright, energetic team members, and on the state award, much cheaper than employing staff at other rates. We also had 5 waste busters, so they were out in the community face-to-face. It was a lot easier to deal with people face-to-face and discuss the challenges and opportunities, solutions, tips, than it was to actually deal with emails and phone calls, which are quite anonymous and quite difficult. We found that 30% of council staff actually live in the LGA, so we recognise this as a great opportunity to make them our ambassadors, train them up on everything FOGO. So I was really fortunate that our general manager, I'd meet with him weekly. We had a PCG, he was on. He looked at FOGO as a whole of council project. It wasn't just a waste team project like bin rollouts or other service changes have been in the past. And we even did like a roadshow. We trained every outdoor staff member. We informed them what FOGO was, why we were doing it, what their role in it was. We gave them business cards to hand out to residents. So if somebody was sweeping the street and they got asked by a resident about what's FOGO, even if they couldn't remember all the detail from the training, they got the business card and went, here, just contact the waste team. They'll tell you all about it. We also had standard responses, so we had to train up staff across council as overflow. So admin officers in the GM's team, in planning, so that they could respond to inquiries with our standard responses or on social media or answer phones. We also, something I think we did quite well was our cold community. So we identified our top 10 communities with least English proficiency, not our top 10 languages, those with least English. What we did was we geo-targeted through channels that they use. So we used SBS on demand. So if I was a Greek resident with a little English-speaking background, then an ad would pop up if I was in the Inner West LGA, all about FOGO. And we did that on the website too, because often we forget and we put, if you speak this language, click here. If I don't speak English, I'm not going to know to actually click here. And we did a community champion program. So we're currently in the process of training 50 residents, train the trainer, to build on our ambassador program. We had cornersmith workshops with food waste avoidance and using the kitchen caddy. And we also had a performer go into every one of our primary schools, our libraries and childcare centres and do a FOGO show and a really catchy Munch Munch FOGO song. So kids were going home and talking to the parents about about it. So we did do some things well, and we are going to write up a case study. So if you want more stats, more information, you've got questions, please reach out. We're here to help. We're in this together. We can't do it alone, and to make it successful, we've got to focus on continuous improvement and help each other. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so I'm just going to ask a kick-off question here, just leading from all of those excellent lessons learned that you've been able to share with us there, Helen, and ask the rest of the panel. There are many, many challenges. Contamination is definitely a core one, and from that comes the challenges of education, bringing the community with you, the challenges of the actual decontamination at the facility. What have you seen work well? When have you seen a change happen that's been a positive change, and I hope Aaron and Matthew have got one of these, but where have you seen a change that's worked well, and if you could tell us a bit about that and what you think might need to be done to have more of that happen?
So for the contamination side of things, it's a constant challenge. There's been rollouts historically where the carts come before the horse, so to speak, and to get that ground back and to get that community engagement back once you've rolled that out with the incorrect messaging is nigh on impossible. Equally, you have a greater challenge in the MUDS areas than the regional, obviously, with faceless generators putting material into larger bins that are a communal bin and then going out to the curbside. No accountability for that, so to speak. Yes, you've got challenge with non-English speaking backgrounds. However, that's statewide. That's for us. When you drill down on all of where it comes from, where it's been, I've seen it all. I've seen textiles, batteries, nappies, medical waste, syringes, real problem. We have everything, the pet Alsatian, unfortunately. So contamination's the forefront, and to manage that for us. What's worked well? What's worked well is the early rollout, the messaging, first of all, I've got a lot of faith in where we're going to be rolling out in the next 12 months in the regional area, where we have a strong sense of social and then emotional engagement. Social is a community, and then emotional, once you get that over the line, you've got a feeling of responsibility. But for me, and knowing where the material ends up, if there's more of a clarity at the other end from the generator on exactly how their behavioural activities actually impact the end product. And for council, having a clear message on the onset, in the lead up, it's coming, it's here, do this, maybe not so much, not do that.
Yep.
That's.
So early advice to the community so that they know it's coming before it's coming, they know what it is all about, and making that connection to the end market and what's going to happen with that.
I think early advice will give us the best chance, and equally regional centres for us. But as a processor, I don't think technology is the answer. Organics is quite a unique beast in its shape, form. The feedstocks can change, the moisture content can change. Depends on your regional or metropolitan area, weather patterns. Your feedstock changes almost month to month, week to week, day to day. And therefore your operations also change. So it's hard to have technology distinguish the bulk density of a 10 millimetre piece of broken glass that's gotten in there for whatever reason, and a piece of wood, which we need in there for the carbon content. So for me, technology is just band-aiding, and I don't think the band-aid solutions, it's a solution, it's costly, it's expensive, but It's not the solution
Best
for
to
me.
deliver the cleanest product possible first. Yeah.
That would be
Great.
A1.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Virginia.
Yeah, that's why I say it's a shared risk and responsibility. I've seen both internationally and in Australia some really good technology that does clean up the compost, but it relies on everything going through the system and being cleaned up at the end, which is something we don't tend to do here in Australia. So compost first, then clean up. It does seem to have, a high impact on quality at the other end. But the other thing I see is education really well delivered early and often, and it's not a one-off. All those councils that think, oh, well, we'll just, spend $200,000 on education at roll-up is not going to deliver the outcomes that you need. And the other thing about education is that you actually have to talk to the adults in the room. They're the decision makers when it comes to compost. We see some very good, engaging programs that speak to the adults about the reasons why this works, why it's important, what the connection is to land. That whole circular story about organics. You put plastic into your FOGO bin, you end up with plastic in your food. That's the sort of level of conversation that you need to have to make decisions at the adult level in the household. Early, often, and probably well targeted.
Yeah, I was just talking with Tullable from Randwick about that very point yesterday, you're doing a big push out with the education right at the beginning. Contamination was, quite good and manageable. And then, of course, the powers that be are sort of saying, well, we can take our foot off that brake and spend that money somewhere else because our contamination levels are not too bad. And as soon as you do that and start to lose that education, the contamination is just going to go back up. It really is something that needs to happen quite early in the piece and be continued throughout. So, yeah, great lesson learned there. Aaron, did you have something you've seen work well?
Not significant amounts. That's worked well in terms of. I think the key thing is continuous education. I think a couple of years ago, when there was a kind of a direction change between what was acceptable and not, there was a bit of a stalemate between who was responsible for communicating that. We also find that when we do find contaminated loads, it's the collector's responsibility to go and chase and follow that down, and we're saying it's both councils and the collectors. So it's changing, and that's what I'm noticing. It's changing. We've resorted to the fact that cardboard packaging, if we've got the time, we'll go and see if we can find addresses, and try and pinpoint and give as much information to the collector and the council saying, look, this is where you need to target your education piece. Like in winter, as the tonnes drop off, it's very, very easy to see the highly contaminated loads and pinpoints the area. We just want to see that continue on, and that targeted messaging go to those specific areas. So yeah, that's what we're starting to see. It's worked well in the recycling side. We've done similar things with the recycling. I know we're talking about FOGO, but Townsville City Council, we work really closely with them on targeting where the contamination was coming from, and they actually got to the residents, especially around medical waste. It was very easy for them to pick out where it was coming from, and they actually had a one-on-one dialogue with that particular resident and came with a solution, and that problem's literally gone away. So that's a success story from recycling side, but there's no reason why we can't see that in FOGO.
Right, thank you. Linda.
Yeah, from a people perspective, most people want to be doing the right thing, but they need that information there right in front of them in a really non-confusing, easy, visual way. And it doesn't matter how many fridge magnets, bin tags, brochures, etc. that we may produce, they need everything. They need it in their face. Not just a fridge magnet, they need the social media clip to remember. We run TV ads in our region. We have a really successful bin monitoring program called Lift the Lid, simple bin tags, happy face, sad face, and that can create change for particular householders a little bit for some time, but you've got to keep going at it. The other thing that works really well in our region, we have pop-up events with our team, our education team and our councils where we're face-to-face with people. And we run a green bin challenge, which highlights the confusion there is with the plastic bags and the biodegradable bags and the compostable bags. Something like 40% of the community did not know the difference between biodegradable and compostable. Like, that's huge, you know, and we've been doing it in our region for a long time. Interestingly, something like 20% of those people that did the green bin challenge, which was like around 700 people, I think, in the end last year, they still didn't know that they could put meat and seafood scraps into the bin as well. It's crazy, you know, what do we have to do to get the message across that all food and garden scraps can go into your green bin? However, please don't put in biodegradable or plastics or nappies or things like that. So, you know, it's that I struggle with knowing what we can do even better. And it's really interesting. I think we need to have more collaboration with the compost facilities to know what's really going on in the ground. I think people want to know how compost happens as well, and they don't really know that. And I know that because for the past two and a half years now, I've got a little talking rubbish segment on ABC North Coast. It's been running for 2.5 years. People ring in every week for around 15 minutes. They want to know what goes in what bin. I can't believe that it's still running. I'm like waiting for somebody to go, okay, no, we don't want that segment anymore. But it's like every week, seriously. And now with the change in fibre-based packaging, that just took a life of its own in our region. Like, you know, word got around through radio. So don't underestimate the power that, you know, education and communication has. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell from me.
Any more tips for us, Helen? And then we're going to open it up for questions from the floor.
Sure. So just building on what Linda said, so we've taken a proactive and a reactive approach to contamination. So we've been doing, obviously, the whole education campaign, socials, printed, the whole lot. But then we've also got our crews doing bin rejections on the curbside. So we've got rear loaders predominantly and some sidearm lifters with cameras. Crews reject the contaminated loads, and then our education team then follow up with the household. We've also doing 5,000 bins bin tagging. We're only giving people a tag on their bin if they did well, but if they didn't do well, we don't want to shame them and make them feel bad about it. Most people, like as Linda said, are genuinely trying to do the right thing. So we just pop a little postcard in the letterbox and then follow up with them directly. We've chatted to our partners at Veolia and Topsoil, and our contamination's around 6%. For a new service only been in 6 months, that's pretty good going. Yeah, so, I mean, we work really closely with our contractors, so we know what the contaminants are, and we'll keep addressing it. And, you know, it's not set and forget, it's a continuous process.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, I'm hoping some of you have some burning questions out there. We've got lots of experience up here on the panel for you to learn from. So, yep, could you just say your name and where you're from?
David Burns from Epoch Enviro. I've been a frequent customer of A&L, buying stuff for my residential home in Manly. But I guess like the things that you're talking about now, like as a customer, what would give me more certainty is that if I buy mulch or I buy compost, I'd like to see a certificate of analysis that shows that you've batch tested your stuff for foreign materials, asbestos, PFAS, and whatever else might be in there. But also, like, so one, would you do that, or are you doing that? And would you also include that as a prerequisite for all your supply chain people that deliver your feedstock for you to make your, your compost or whatever. So that's at the end of the process to give the market certainty that you're selling a clean product.
Thanks, David, and thanks for being a customer. To answer your question, yes, 100%. So ANL is certified under multiple standards and compliance agreement arrangements. Those standards include, in the very early days, the 3743, the potting mix standard, and then into the 4454, the compost standard. Also the 4419, which is the soils for landscape and gardening. So this is very much my wheelhouse, and it has been for some time, but even more so in 2024. So there's a range of organic feedstocks that go into a range of different pathways to manufacture a range of different products that are fit for purpose. That's where ANL's strength is. It's in market diversity, product development, and being able to manufacture fit for purpose, available, cost-effective solutions for anyone that's growing anything. So to answer your question, no, the Australian standard certification comes with a stringent audit process, and that audit process contains, and the pathway to get that material certified contains batch testing, temperature logs, sending it off to a third-party lab. We also have internal basic testing, and recently, which is above and beyond the Australian standard, we're testing for asbestos. Every batch that goes out, we now include asbestos at our cost, because, like I told you, it's a demand, it's no longer a desire. So back to the pathways. So a range of products, range of different purposes. We also have NASA certified organic products that go into the market, select chosen pathways, clean feedstock that are selected to go through for different applications, different purposes. What we're here for today is FOGO. FOGO goes to agriculture. I'd love to see the FOGO go into our biggest market, which is urban amenity, which is the highest demand, which has to travel the less distance and has the lowest carbon footprint. But we seem to be just adding cost, but it's cheaper to go to landfill, but then we have to put it on a truck and then we have to go this way. And anyway, so I digress. So yes, David, yes we do. I'm available after this, and we can have a chat and I can reinforce your confidence in the products, no problem. We're actually above and beyond now the standards testing. There's a standards review that's coming out, or is out. So it's still coming. It's been coming for... Yep, so Virginia might add to that. But quality is now forefront. Quality has been for some time forefront. And to give the confidence to anyone that's growing anything in any market is absolute key.
Just to add to that, AS 4454 is the national standard for composting products, and it's under review. And in part of that review, a lot of issues are being looked at, but one of them particularly is the contamination thresholds and so forth. So there may well be some changes in that. But ahead of that, a couple of recent contracts have come out that have got contamination control, quality control, built into the contract, so that every respondent to those tenders for a particular level of contamination in the product at the end. So there's an inbuilt quality control into the contract, and particularly the physical contamination thresholds are half of AS 4454. So in order to maintain that agricultural market or that urban amenity market, it is recognised that physical contamination, which usually heralds underlying chemical contamination, is actually embedded within the contract. And to reach those thresholds, it's a tendered, competitive playing field, so that all responders to those contracts recognise that they need to improve the quality in order to maintain the market. And this, just comes back to my original point is about the shared risk and responsibility for contamination.
Just on shared risk and responsibility, what's happening of late and with FOGO is it seems to be all risk is on the processor. Councils will put out a contract, and we've seen some up to recently as much as 40% contamination. Oh yeah, but you can charge us for this, and I understand there's a pathway there, but we just can't do anything with that. And if the risk is going to be all on the processor, then you're not going to have anything at the back end, and we're just going to be peddling for no reason. We're not a waste company, we're a horticultural company. And that's where the foundations lie. So risk on the process is massive.
Thank you. We've got another question here. The mic. And then we'll go to you, Costa, and then I think we've got, Michael.
Dave Rees, I'm the waste manager at Mid Coast. I think one of the things that's been missed, but it's been touched on by Matthew, is the economics around it for councils. So I've mentioned it before, but probably not clear enough, is that regional councils, they're split. There's regional councils out west that aren't in the levy paying area, and they get adequate support to provide their service because they need it. Mid Coast, Port Macquarie, we're in the levy paying area, and the economics around going to FOGO are that our ratepayers are going to be paying probably $90 to $100 more per year in their rates. So I suppose one of the interesting things to sell is that a lot of the messaging that comes out is around, it's better for the environment. Completely agree. I think we should be going this way. But some of the messaging is broken for regional levy paying councils because you're seeing messaging that's saying, let's go this way, improve outcomes for the planet. It's more economical, yes, the reduced levy liability, reduced landfill, all that sort of stuff. But the quantity of scale in those regional areas is actually at a point where that's not the reality. You save 600K in levy liability, you end up paying let's say between $5 and $6 million a year to provide the service. So I suppose to the floor, is there a way that you can see that regional councils in our areas could provide a more cost-effective service owing to the large transport distances to any service providers, apart from building an expensive facility?
Take that. Opportunities for cost reduction?
I just wanted to qualify. I can't answer your question, but I did want to qualify that North East Waste is in a levy-paying area. So 6 out of our 7 councils pay levy.
I'd respond by saying, FOGO is not one size fits all. Some recent work we've done in the regions have shown that there's very little food waste in the red bin to begin with, let alone after you introduce a weekly FOGO service. And perhaps the EPA might rethink the best model for regional areas in order that, you capture what food you can with a fortnightly service and thereby halve the cost of collection, but also rethink the type of technology that's required in regional areas. So if you're processing FOGO in a highly urbanised area, you need, in-vessel receiving, like enclosed receiving, in-vessel processing. But perhaps in the regions, you don't need this. There are very good technologies that can process FOGO and other organic wastes very efficiently, odour-free. It doesn't all have to be expensive in vessel. And, to get that message across to particularly regional EPA that, require, a very fixed model for FOGO processing, might need a bit of a rethink. And whether it's a planning question or whether it's an EPA question, it's a bit difficult to just break those two apart in New South Wales. But we're doing some work for regional councils with low-cost technology, with either weekly or fortnightly FOGO, depending on their particular desires. But I think there are models out there where FOGO can be effectively and economically achieved in the regions. But first you need to understand how much food waste is actually in your system and what it's going to cost to get that out. That's my thinking. So do some good economic modelling. Yeah, I know a company that does that.
We'll go to Costa.
Just on regional centres quickly. Regional centres, and I'm on the Central Coast, but I cover all of ANL. And we've got some great contracts, and there's some lovely people in the room, you know, bin suspensions, monitoring, knocking on doors, all that kind of thing. If FOGO's going to work, my feeling, and it is already working, of course, but for the most higher success, and it's working in some factors, and not to take a backward step, regional centres, I think is going to be a success story, and for us, that's all eyes are on regional.
Like contamination
Yep.
is very low in the regions.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for a great conversation. For me, I'm on the front line of education 24/7, and there's a saying in Greek that goes "Golo ke vraki." Any Greeks in the room? Oh, good to see, at least one. It goes together like bum and undies. Now, what do I mean by that? Contamination and education, they're inseparable. They're a contract. And we heard conversation about contract, and I've been talking in the keynote, I talked about that whole concept of the industry language and community language. And there's a contract between, you know, all of you up there, whether it's the council, whether it's ANL, the processors. They've got a contract. You've got a contract directly with every individual family, every individual human. Like, imagine being in a contract. Could you imagine just signing a contract with the entire municipality of Randwick? Well, that's what we've done. And education is that link between the two, but I don't believe we're anywhere near the mark on education. Like, not, and we can't rely on each council to come up with their innovations. Like, so my question is, where are we? So we talk about, you know, and the information goes up there as a business thing, you know, like this is industry at work. We've redirected 200,000 tonnes or however much it is. What's the true value of that? And if there is a true value on that, imagine taking 10% of that money and putting it into education. Or if that money saved was put into education. So my question is, how do we get an overarching education that takes the energy that councils are putting in, but put it across the board so that it's statewide? I went into federal parliament, I got called in by the Environment Minister and told them, your issue is you want to put this money into education. You're not an education provider, you have to support the education. So my question is, where do we get more money into education at the state and federal level to support the rollout of interactive education on the ground, on the streets with those programs, in the schools particularly, getting them on the conveyor belt early, because I see the work that early childhood is doing, because I'm involved with it, and those kids are ruthless. You know, they will change the adults faster than, you know, any bloody fridge magnet or colouring in book or any other malarkey of that calibre. Like, that's just a waste of space. Like, the kids are energy. So how do we get the money into education? Because to me, it's not even on the radar. They're just, you know, and I mean, you see the stuff that Anne does. I mean, we've got all the stats there, but I think there's just a chasm. There's no signal between the two in my world. So that's my question.
Okay. Who wants to take that?
I'll start. All state governments have a waste levy. A lot of that waste levy ends up in consolidated revenue, but it is all apportioned to every tonne that goes into landfill. A model that really, really worked is in Albury. Is Andrea in the room? Oh, okay. Yeah, hi, Michelle. From the early outset of Halve Waste, they put a $2.50 additional fee on every tonne that went to landfill. They have control of their landfill, they have control of the gate fee, and it was within their remit to do that. Every single regional council has capability of doing that. And for the ones that don't, state government does. Now, it took $2.50, which created about $400,000 a year. That was dedicated to education. And they have run, for the last 10 years, an inordinate number of education programs. Their FOGO contamination is at 1.5%. Their recycling contamination is at 2%. The amount of food that's left in the FOGO bin is less than a kilo, which is half the national average. So there is a model out there and it works. And what that does is attach the amount of education to the amount that's going in landfill, and they should be inversely proportional, but tends not to change. The amount going to landfill, because population increases, stays the same. So there is a model out there. We just need to encourage some of that waste levy to be dedicated to education. I know the EPA gets some of it, but it needs to be tagged and targeted and responsibly used. And we need a mature, deep education program. Something that covers all sections of the community, something that talks to all levels within the community at their level, and really ties the outcomes of FOGO, which is healthy food, back to the household. That's the link, and I think that's the heart and mind that you need to capture, the soul of, whatever I put in my FOGO bin comes back to me as food. And I think that's the link.
I think I absolutely agree in terms of waste levy and accessibility of some of that money coming back directly, not just to the EPA, but to councils a little bit more, to other organisations potentially in the community. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all education model that can work across the board for every community, but what the EPA has done, and I've got to applaud what you guys have done in terms of putting together the Scrap Together campaign with all the resources that are accessible to councils, perhaps making it more accessible to councils to even look at before they start, though, as well, so that they can see what's available. And I know you guys are busy doing that and improving on that. And so it is a journey. And I know there are some fabulous programs like what you guys do, Costa, with early childhood and schools education, all of that integrated together is so important. And that collaboration and the partnerships that we can form across the board to, make the difference and try and prevent that sticker, the fruit sticker, from going into the bin. But more important than that, why is the fruit sticker actually being, why is there compostable packaging that says that it's 100% compostable? What's that doing on packaging when it isn't actually, and it's full of PFAS and forever chemicals, and if it's not PFAS, it'll be something else in the future? Why aren't we looking at reusables more, as solutions? So there are so many messages out there for people, not just about getting your food into the green bin, but what about preventing good food from going into any kind of bin in the first place as well, the Love Food, Hate Waste program. So getting your recycling right, checking the labels. So there's a lot going on. And then in amongst all of that, we're also dealing with a national health crisis with vaping, with road safety, etc. So for councils to get those social media messages up on their social media platforms around green bins, sometimes, dogs are more important than the green bins, the lost dog and the lost pet, or a nice picture of the region and a nice picture of the beach. So, give us more money, the waste levy.
So I will just say, if anyone who hasn't had quite enough FOGO, I will be on at 11 talking about the work that the EPA is doing and continuing to build on around education. So the Scrap Together campaign, as well as the new Starting Scraps, which is the one for councils to use sort of in the 4 to 6 month lead up to the service coming into play. I wish that we could just go out and run a above the line, don't be a tosser style campaign, but of course we've got 60 odd, nearly 80 more councils to roll this out to, and we can't have mixed messages going to people who are not going to get a service for 6 more years. So, but yeah, we've obviously got a lot more work to do on that. And yeah, you can hear more about it at 11 o'clock. Michael, did you still have your question? Yep.
Hello. Yeah, Michael from Cleanaway. So 5 years from now, we're talking about the AS4454 has been reviewed. I'm just hearing what you're saying, Matthew, and just thinking about, if I've got this correct, Garden Organics makes a very high quality product suitable for urban amenity. You can take a FOGO material and you can make a product that's compliant, but it's at the higher end of that contaminant spectrum, and your company feels more comfortable supplying that to an agriculture market. We review the AS4454. We've seen physical contaminants back to back with our resource recovery orders. How do you see a change in the Australian standards which may affect RROs and then affect your ability to make a FOGO product that's compliant for agriculture? Like, how do we, I guess, keep those fit-for-purpose markets for fit-for-purpose products? Yeah, I think I just wanted to see where that goes.
Might just take one response on this one because we've got a couple more questions.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So, source separation at the beginning. Source separation, and you can take that product and have that end market, but you can also use other organic waste streams for other pathways. So you can achieve what you need to do with the right feedstock is basically the message there. Does that answer your question? Or? So for agriculture, you have a different set point of upper threshold guidelines as you would for whether it's GO, FOGO, biosolids compost. There's different pathways involved in that process. So does that not really answer your question? I mean, it may change it, but the contamination thresholds, when they are reviewed, it'll just be, it's a chicken and egg there. I suppose I'm answering, but not. We'll have to wait until the review comes out, right?
Take that one up at morning tea.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I think what all the people standing up there today, including the EPA, have done in education and in FOGO awareness is absolutely amazing. I think that more campaigns and learning from each other are definitely important, but what I'm hearing from the panel today is that FOGO, more than a lot of other education things that we deal with, is very person to person. You know, you're tagging bins, you're calling people up that haven't understood the system correctly. And so I would love to see funding being funneled, not just into campaigns and assets, but into ongoing positions that can talk to our community about how to get the best out of their FOGO systems. Oh, that's not really a question, sorry. But I would...
Noted.
I would love to, hear if... I think that's what the panel's been saying, and if there's anybody that doesn't agree, I'd
that's
be happy to hear
100%
it.
correct, and to riff off what Coffs was saying, and last year or the year before, it's about community. It's all about community.
I'll just give a statistic. 80% of contamination comes from 3% of the bins. It's not difficult to target those 3%. So that's where the effort needs to lie. Industry can deal with the 20% of contamination, but if councils were to focus on the 3% of households, part of the problem will be solved. They've just got to have the resources. And you're right, it's door to door, it's knocking, it's actually talking to people. And as Talibal knows, that's an expensive process.
There's a really good audit report on the EPA website too that has those sorts of stats in it that says, you know, when you roll out to a community, about half the community will pick it up and run with it. The other half won't do it at all to begin with. And then, the contamination is coming from a very small slice, but it's huge and it has a big impact on everybody else. So I'd recommend that report.
Just quickly, I just wanted to sort of round off. So it's either organic or it's not. It either goes in the bin or it doesn't.
Sounds easy.
It's as simple as that, really. Doing it mixed in the messaging. Don't get overcomplicated. And what Tony said yesterday, don't let today's asbestos be tomorrow's FOGO. I mean, that really hit home for me because, like I said, I've been in this 26 years. This is my 8th waste conference. I want to come next year. I don't want to be the one that's walking away, tail between the legs, thinking, oh, what's that last 26 years for? So.
Ben.
Ben Lewis, Maitland City Council. Probably a question for Virginia. We've got FOGO implementation coming up next year. Political decision has been to keep the red bins weekly. Wondering, organic, I think our food component of our red bin's about 25%. I'm wondering if we've got enough data and you're able to comment on how much harder we'll find it to get that 25% out of the red bin, out of the red bin, considering the red bins are going to stay weekly as opposed to going to fortnightly.
The easy stat is about 5%. So there's about a 5% difference between fortnightly and weekly, the amount of food that you capture in the green bin if you have a fortnightly or a weekly service. So depending on how much food you start out with, that could be a lot or it could, not be very much. In the regional areas, and the other thing to bear in mind is irrespective of the frequency of the red bin, there's still 2 kilos of food on average across, we've done quite a number of, and even the EPA data shows us between 1.6 and 1.9 kilos of food remaining in the red bin, even in their best practice service. So we sort of have to understand that that's always going to be there, and that's about a chicken carcass. And when we were involved in Albury, we ran a really strong campaign focused on that chicken carcass, that people seem to not want to put that in the bin. It's the last thing, you can't feed it to dogs, you can't feed it to chicken, blah, blah, and it ends up in the red bin. So bear that in mind to begin with, and then there's about a 5% difference. But then you can improve that with using caddy liners, and there's other things that you can, make it easier for households to put that food into the red bin, even though they've got a red bin weekly. But ultimately, you might be able to shift that red bin to fortnightly, but don't do it straight away. And I think that two-step dance is a really important concept that, bring the community along with you, leave the red bin weekly, wear that cost. And then when the community is comfortable or more comfortable, quietly, silently, maybe overtly, shift the red bin to fortnightly. It's a 2-step or maybe a 10-step dance, but
Thank you.
Don't do it all at once.
We've got one more question, unless Linda, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or?
It would make it so much easier if everyone did the same thing, basically. That's it. And that's what we did in our region. We just kind of followed each other's lead. And I think it's worked really well. And yeah, I feel sorry if you're going to, I know there's politics and political pressure out there. I don't know whether we can kind of overcome that. You'd know.
And I'd agree with you there, Linda. Be brave. Use the evidence-based research. Use your data and tonnages. And one size doesn't fit all, as we've just kept saying. So the majority of people actually do like the fortnightly garbage, weekly FOGO, but have those contingencies in place so that opt in weekly for those that need it, or the larger red bin for those with 3 kids in nappies. So just having options available, we can't assume that everybody needs weekly garbage. And I think the EPA research suggests that you halve the amount of food that you get from the red bin if you offer weekly. So know your community, know your waste.
Helen, with the changes that you guys made earlier in this year, where you went and offered to people that they could go back to weekly for their red bin, what sort of take-up was there?
Yeah, so of 35,000 houses, we've had 1,488 who've actually opted in for weekly garbage. And we've also had 4,800 that have upsized their red bin. A lot of the red bin upsizes were early on, and I think that was largely due to fear. People are scared that they're not going to be able to cope. When any of us in life have change, we are scared, and we want to put, manage that risk and have contingencies in place. So, yeah, we're doing audits at the moment, and we'll be evaluating, and we'll be comparing those 3 different systems, so the larger bin, the opt-in weekly, and the standard service, which is the fortnightly. So look forward to being able to share that with you all at a later date.
Thank you. Question over here.
Hi, this is Vagish from Berwickshire Council. It's a very interesting conversation what we are having now. It's very insightful for us because we are launching our FOGO bin from 1st of July. Very insightful, actually. And after listening to all your discussions, I'm really getting worried about the education and the contamination challenges will be, because we have got a very limited budget for education, community education. I've been given $35,000 to educate community. That's what they said, that's what you have, you manage with that. And it's not enough, I know that. How long we need to continue, educating a community to bring down the contamination level? I know that, it all worries me about the contamination level you're talking about. Despite doing all that, last 1 or 2 years, still having, a lot of contamination being identified. So how do we how long we can continue community education? And also what kind of budget, where do you find the money? I know the council has got very limited resources, financial resources. We need to wait for grants or funding from EPA or, other councils. So there are challenges for us.
Challenge of ongoing education.
Good luck. Lots of ongoing education. Apply for the grants. Have a 10-year waste model. Build it in. We should be educating on all of our streams, not just FOGO. FOGO, recycling, cleanup, all of these materials, there's opportunities. It's not set and forget. But yeah, happy to chat.
Yeah. The TV ads, do you think will it help? Because I feel that more visual education probably will stay, in their mind, because they keep seeing on the TV ads. Maybe that's more reachable to, majority of our, residents. Do you think that will help? So that's again expensive. Have a TV, audio, TV ads for 2-3 years. Who's going to fund for that? But we are only doing for 2-3 months, which is not enough. We know that.
Well, there will be kind of statewide campaigns. Scrap Together is brilliant. And as soon as there's more of us doing FOGO, there can be those statewide programs. And that will really norm it and reduce our workload going forward in terms of education. But we've always got to be proactive and reactive in education.
Thank you.
Okay, we might finish up there. Thanks so much for your attention for this last hour and a half. Please thank the panel.